Greetings everyone. My name is Thami Akambongo. Umbongo umbuyisa ungqaleza undimo usondisa umvemnyama ozalwa ngomanzana okhumalo omntungwa omdleke. Ndithi kuni today compliments of the new season. Welcome to our show, The State of the Arts with Thami Akambongo. Today our guest is Gregory Maqoma. We're going to be talking to Gregory Maqoma to find out his opinion and views on certain issues. Some of the issues that we cover. Gregory Maqoma recently toured 4 months in Europe. We want to hear about his experience on that. We are also wanting to talk about opening up theaters. You know, in South Africa, theaters are not yet open, but in Europe, there are many countries that have opened up the theater. We want to hear his views on how can we in South Africa start to open up theaters. We want to talk about more on collaboration because Gregory Maqoma is known for working with so many different artists. And we want to hear his views, Uguti. What is it that he's looking for when collaborating? Who knows? You might be watching the show and you might be lucky to collaborate with Gregory Maqoma. And we also want to talk about funding because we know many of us depend on South African government funding. But we've got Abafana Gregory Maqoma who always tour extensively abroad. And surely they are not only getting the funding, if they do get any funding from South African government. So we want to empower you through this interview to know other avenues. And then we also spoke to him about on programming dance. As you know, our artistic director in South Africa, they mainly focus on theater. The only time that we see dance is when there are dance festivals. So we want to hear Gregory Maqoma's views on that. And then we also want to hear his take on President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister Nathi Mthethwa on issues that has to do with cultural and creative industry. Gregory Maqoma is also part of STEM Foundation. We want to find out about STEM Foundation. And also we know Vuyani Dance Theatre. So we want him to tell us more about the work that Vuyani Dance Theatre is doing. And also we want to hear more about the process of creating, because you know when you're watching Gregory Maqoma's work, you will see the spirituality. We understand that it really moved when you watch Gregory Maqoma production. So we want to hear more about his spiritual connection. And also we talked to him about mentorship in South Africa to find out what is his take, and then he's going to give us closing remarks. So this show is going to be more about Gregory Maqoma. We're going to hear his views. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. And also click on that notification so that you know when our videos end. Make sure you write your comments so that we can make sure Gregory is interacting with you. This is your show. It's called State of the Arts with Thami Akambongo. As you know, we are doing a National Imbewu Virtual Arts Festival, which is funded by the National Arts Council. This is part 1 of that, which we are going down the memory lane. So check out this interview of Gregory Maqoma. Hope you enjoy it.
I'm hugely grateful to be having a 4-month tour in these times of COVID-19, when so many of artists, my peers, are sitting without any work. And for me to be able to travel, in Europe and to premiere 3 works in different cities and different theaters, that I think it's incredible. I think I feel incredibly blessed to be able to do that. So my journey started actually in France, where I was commissioned to create a new piece for Ballet de Lyon, of which is going to premiere in December. So I will be back and forth between Lyon and South Africa. And then I went to Manchester International Festival, where I worked with Sue Buckmaster on the new creation, a new commission, which is my first piece, which is literally made for children. And I couldn't be more chuffed to be making a piece for young people. So yeah, that went well, and it was commissioned by Manchester International. We premiered. It was a live performance, plus we did as well the film on it. And then I went to Edinburgh Festival to premiere Retrace Retract, which is a work that I worked on with a cream de la cream of South African artists who are making waves. You know, they might not be recognized even in our own country, but now I can tell you they are known, particularly in Edinburgh Festival, because their voice was heard, their movement was felt, the joy of the kind of work they're making was really appreciated in that city. Jefferson Shabalala, a poet. I've been wanting to work with him. We had just been waiting for a special project, and this came, and I couldn't have been more glad to collaborate with him on this project. Yeah, and then I'm back home, and 2 days later, 2 days after my arrival, I was standing at Lutili House with Mom Sibongile Mngoma and with placards, and asking, for the president to please, can you just listen to our pleas? Can you just understand where we are as artists, that we are citizens of this country, we are contributors of the GDP, we pay taxes, we go out of the country, we make money there, which we bring back and we invest in the country. So please hear us when we say we do need you to reconsider the blanket closure of theaters, that it cannot be treated as a blanket, and we need systems that will allow there's some kind of an intervention to this. And also, to say very boldly, get rid of Minister Nathi Mthethwa. Get rid of him. He has done a disservice to this sector, and we need to stand tall and very boldly as an artistic community to say that we do not want him, we do not recognize him as a Minister of Arts and Culture, because he never recognized us as a sector that is thriving, as a sector that can really create something that is magnificent, that is beautiful, as a sector that employs people, 7% of the working force in this country. So yes, we are a workforce, and that we want the president to recognize. So I went there and I said, I'm not going to sit out and look. I'm going to join my brothers and sisters as we raise our placards and say, Aluta continua, the fight has to continue. Absolutely. I mean, there's a consolidated effort between, the private sector, the citizens, the artist community, the government. That consolidation, the Minister of Health, has resulted in theaters being recognized as one of the safest spaces in those countries. So we played to 70% capacity. Some theaters were on 50%, depending on the size of the theater that you were in. So theaters were close to full. I mean, our shows were sold out on that 70% capacity. And protocols are observed. People are watching the shows with masks on. You go to a restaurant in this country, people sitting in the restaurants, they don't have masks on. And those restaurants are almost functioning at 100% capacity. While, theaters who are actually the safest spaces, who can observe these protocols much more efficiently, are not being allowed to function in the way that they should be. So I think there's evidence in other countries that states that we can open theaters safely. We can be in a position where we can allow audiences to come into those spaces safely. But in addition to that, is that the consolidation of all the sectors involved, or all, even including, health sector, is to say, here we are. Why don't we use theaters as a safe test model? Bring in also your vaccination points within the doorsteps of a theater. If people are coming in, they're not being vaccinated, they can get an antigen test. They immediately, it takes 15 minutes to get a result from an antigen test. And then people can be allowed in. So that consolidation allowed people to feel safe, number one, and then secondly, to get into the theaters. So theaters were not just shut, and artists were able to earn a living. Yeah, and I think that the one thing that I always say, even to my peers and colleagues, is that we need to collaborate more. We need to be talking more as different sectors. I'm able to hold a conversation with a composer, with a visual artist, a filmmaker. So those conversations often lead to this kind of collaborations where, I'm able to make a film that I can invite a filmmaker, I can invite a music composer to come on board. But I think also important is that I've always, wherever I go, I make sure that there is always an extended effort for me to be in touch with the local community, to be in touch with the people who are working in those communities, because I think it's critical and important for us to not just go into a city, perform and go, but I want to make sure that there is something that is far more significant and profound in the connection that I make with people that are living in those cities. And those connections, they often lead to those kind of collaborations where I get invited more and more into those cities to collaborate, to perform, to make work, to create on new companies. So yeah, that has really been my motto to kind of like open up to other forms of art, celebrate other forms of art, and allow other forms of art to inspire the new vision, the new idea. So it's never a lonely kind of journey that I'm taking. I'm always taking others with me, and collaboration really is at the core of my work. I love collaborating. I love working with people who don't have the skill that I have, because they can only enhance the work. They can only really bring their energy and something that is far more beautiful than I would do if I was on this journey on my own.
Collaboration.
Sometimes, I don't decide, people decide. And I've had those kind of incidents where, someone will walk into my studio or give me a phone call and share their material with me. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's really something and then down the line, I will put it in a shelf. And then down the line, a project comes. And because somebody has already knocked on my door who possesses a skill that could be useful for that project, then I pick up the call and say, hey, buddy, remember we had this conversation. Remember you walked into the studio. I think I do have a project that can really make us work together. And that's how it works normally. And sometimes it's really because somebody possesses something that is so unique and so special that I feel that I want to learn from that person. I want to understand their craft. So it is my curiosity sometimes that pushes me to want to work with somebody who I have not worked with before. And at times it's about continuity. Like most of my composers that I've worked with, there's always been that continuity. We start with this project and I feel, oh, actually, this was a beginning. We need to find the middle point. And I will create in the next project with them where we find the middle point. And from the middle point, we need to find what is the high point that we can find, and it leads us to the next project. So there's sometimes that kind of like continuity that I look for. Yeah, talk. I talk a lot about my projects. The project could be in the next 5 years, but I'll put up a loudspeaker, and I'll send out feelers to everyone that I know, the theaters that I've been to, festivals that I've been to. Everybody will know that Gregory is making a work for 2025. And that is exactly what is happening now. I'm already on that role that I'm making a work. I'm a new creation for 2025, and I'm sending feelers out there. So if you are listening, I am making a work for 2025, and I'm looking for collaborators. I'm looking for investors. I'm looking for producers. I'm looking for theaters to come on board. So it's about it. It's always been a vocal about my ambitions, my dreams. How I see the future. I communicate. It takes, to make an example, the last piece that we just premiered, Broken Chord, it's a piece that I started talking about 4 years ago. And I sent an email to few producers. They all responded positively towards it. So I didn't have to go and apply for funding for that production. It took one email that went into 6 producers and theaters who came on board, and each one of them contributed equal. They all contributed equal amount of money to make up what I needed for that project to happen. So it was not for me filling in an application that was going to the National Arts Council or filling in an application that was going to the lottery or any other institutions that funds the arts. It was talking to the very people who are interested in booking work that was to be presented in different theaters. And by the way, this was also sent to various theaters in our country. But as we know, there's not been a response in that in coming from our country. So all my co-producers for this particular work are all international players in the USA and Europe. And that's something that I feel very strongly that we still have to find ways in which we could create flexibility. We could create creative ways in which productions can be funded. Theaters can come together. Like, for instance, we've got state-funded theaters in the country. Why can't they come together to co-produce a production that can tour the country, can go into all these different places? That's how you sustain the work. Because at the moment, the system is that the National Arts Council funds the project, but you still have to find a way in which that project goes into those theaters. So there's something is not connecting there. And if that work is performed once, then it dies a horrible death. You know what I mean? So how do we enlarge and ensure that investment is really, it has a ripple effect, that it does not really about just performing, because to sustain the art, to sustain the artist is by them allowing them to perform continuously. And by allowing artists to perform continuously, then you're sustaining their livelihood, you're sustaining the sector. Yeah, I think the word itself, theater, is kind of like misleading in terms of how the artistic directors are selected for those, particularly the state-funded theaters. Because if you look at those state-funded theaters, the artistic directors, one, most of them, they are male, and then secondly, they are theater practitioners. So there is no a dance programmer in those theaters, someone who looks after dance, who will say, I have a calendar for dance for this year in this theater. If you do have theater in those dances, it does not equal to the amount of theater productions that are being produced in those theaters. And that for me is, again, the disengagement with the real reality of what is going on in our country. At this moment in time, I can tell you, Tammy, that dance, it is the most sought after from this country abroad. If you look, I can count now in terms of people who are abroad. Mamela Nyamza now, she is abroad. I just came back. Dada Masilo just came back. You know what I mean? So there's a market for dance. We have not explored that market in this country. And it's solely because theaters themselves have not come up with a solid, a decisive manner in which they can program dance in their theaters. I think, and I speak maybe from a position of privilege because, I'm able to tour and make work and travel overseas and get commissions. But I really think for this country to listen, to hear us, we need a shutdown. We need to shut everything that has to do with creativity. Everything that has to do with the creative sector needs to shut down. For them to realize just the impact of the creative sector in this country. If you close radio, if you close television, just for one day, let's see that kind of an impact the creative sector bring to the lives of citizens in this country. And I think, we need also to stand together as a sector. And this has been something that has been used as an excuse by the minister himself to say, we segregated as an industry, and forgetting that, we segregated because everybody is trying to, to get hold of the piece of the pie. And that really has pushed us to be segregated. But no one has really, from the ministry itself, has ever said, except, by saying that here's SIFSA for you, which is something that we don't recognize as well, because there is an agenda there. But no one has ever said to say or mention the fact that, in order for this sector to really function, let's look at the policy that's going to govern this country. We've been sitting with the white paper for far too long. And up to this day, it has not been really, given a day even in Parliament to be tabled as something that is of critical importance for this country. So where are we leading? We're leading to a place where there's and I sense there's an eruption now. Hence, during this COVID-19, we've had the emergence of organizations like STAND, like TADA, like, SADA, and for the Arts, SOSIF. Those organizations, they came because there is a dire need for a sector to start looking at how are we going to correct the wrongs that we have allowed to happen for far too long. And I think we are in a critical place then to say, here we are, we're all speaking the same language. How do we come together then as those entities and start mapping a strategy? Because that's what we need now. It's a strategy of how we're going to deal with those who are not prepared to listen, who continue to ignore our. Yeah, I think, for STAND, I think that the word itself, STAND, the abbreviation STAND, it tells you itself that we need to stand. But also sustaining theater and dance, which is the meaning of STAND, for me speaks to far more greater length than us having to fight for relief funding. How do we get ourselves to be a sustained sector? How do we get ourselves to speak about sustainability in the arts, in the creative sector, particularly for theater and dance? And that for me was like the founding ethos that I felt that foundation was so strong that I felt I want to be part of this movement. Also because it was saying this is about the artist doing it for themselves. How do we begin to stand as artists and start creating models that are going to feed us back? How are we going to make provision for creative programs to emerge within this foundation, for us to be able to give a lifeline back to the sector, by ourselves and not wait for somebody to say, I am going to give you a lifeline, but I also can decide when I want to pull the plug. Yeah, I mean, Tammy, there's no secret because we share very widely with other creatives in terms of the model that we use as Vuyani Dance Theatre. And our model is simple: is we created a business model. We wanted to be function as a business, to understand that there's value in what we're doing, and to understand that that value needs to be sustained, and create strategies that are going to sustain that value, but also to understand what is the value chain in that. So, and the business model allows us, there are 5 pillars that we're talking about in the business model. One is we understand collaboration. We understand that there's value in collaboration. And number 2, we understand that there is the international funding that can take us out of the normal funding cycle, where you can send an email, then you get an answer tomorrow to say, yes, I'm interested, no, I'm not interested. We developed a vigorous marketing department, of which so many independent companies don't have the marketing departments, and you don't have to create like in the corporate sector, the marketing department, but you can find one person who is versed, who knows, the language, the marketing language, who can be on board like we do. We have Sia Dokota, who comes from that space and loves the arts, and has been a contributing factor to the development of the business strategy of Vuyani Dance Theatre. So he goes out and we sell the product because we have a product. We've got something that we are creating, that we've been creating. We're training dancers, they become part of the product. We're making productions, they become the product. And that we sell to corporates, we sell to international players, we sell also to our local theaters. So that consolidated approach in terms of the business model allows us not only to be dependent on the normal funding models that the NGOs will usually do. Hence, we also created from Vuyani Dance Theatre another entity, which is Vuyani Dance Company. It's a Pty Ltd company. That is a company that will go out and say, this is how much we charge for this production. And we will like to offer you this at this price. So VDC is the wing of Vuyani that is a business. And it fits into the Vuyani Dance Theatre, where Vuyani Dance Theatre then does the training, does the outreach programs. So the money that's generated from VDC supports then the heart projects, the projects that we love doing. It supports the creation of those new projects, which then will go into VDC for VDC to sell, in order for them to generate income that will then sustain the company. But we also have a trust. There's a Vuyani Dance Trust. And Vuyani Dance Trust allows us also to go in and create a patronage, to create people who can come in and say, we would like to be patrons of this organization. We love what you're doing. And they contribute to the trust, because they also get the tax rebate from that, from the contribution. So there's something that we offer back to them, and then they can also then support the organization in ways that it can help them to also to get some value from their tax money, but also at the same time, it makes them feel good that I am contributing. My money is contributing to the development of dancers from that company. Yeah, I mean, clearly, in the kind of work that I produce, there's always that spiritual connection, and I think that spiritual connection starts from the dream. You know, when I'm in my home, in my bed, and dreaming about the project, I allow that dream to manifest in different ways. It's up until there's an eruption in that dream, where now I'm saying to myself, listen, you have to do this now. It's been in the system. Your ancestors, God, are speaking to you about this particular production. You need to make it happen. Up until that happens, then I will not touch the project. So I allow it to manifest, you know, in my body, in the physical being, so that by the time I communicate it to my collaborators or to whoever I'll be talking to, it comes armed with the spiritual connotations, that I'm not just talking from a psychological or philosophical point. I'm really speaking from the spiritual point, which has manifested over time for that particular project. So yes, I believe very strongly in that spiritual connection. And also, with my collaborators, there's a process that I take them through. That I will share the project in the first stage, and I will allow them to go away and allow the project or the seed to kind of grow in them, so that by the time they come back to me, they come back with like, oh, this is the idea that I have. Oh, this I'm thinking of this, because the seed has also manifested in them. And I'm hugely open to that kind of a process where my collaborators, they come into the same space with me to share the vision, to come back into like, how do we expand your vision? How do we take it big? How do we make it bigger? You just planted the seed. We want to expand it. Yeah, I mean, I think firstly is it will be wrong of me to create the many Maqomas. I think what we need to do is to create people who have their own vision, who can then grow the sector and grow also the body of work, in which leads into the historical growth of our of the dance history in our country. So so I want to make that clear first, and then secondly is that we need to create space. That mentorship is about sharing, is not about pre-coding for someone to be the exact replicate, or to replicate your ideas, your vision, or your aesthetics. For me, when I go into a mentorship, is to first and foremost to be led by the person I am mentoring. So my mentees will be the ones who are running the mentorship program, and I become just a catalyst. I become the instigator. I become the person who allows possibilities for them to see some of the things I might not be seeing. I come in ready to say, what about this? What about that? Why are you doing that? What makes you to go that direction? Why not left? Why right? So I impose those kind of questions, which will allow for them to expand their thinking in whatever project that they are engaged with. And also it's about, you know, giving space, allow people to fail, and I think that's something that we have not done in this country so much. Or, you know, or institutions of learning, institute of higher learning. The biggest failures is that they producing people who are good in terms of putting concept on paper, but they've not been given the opportunity for them to say, let me allow the physical being of myself to be the embodiment of what is in my mind, what I'm thinking about, so that that can be tested and goes into trials, and allow failure to happen. And this is what, as Vuyani Dance Theatre, we have done for so long, to say, go ahead and fail, we will hold you. And then there's a second chance, there's a refinement. Like I do with my productions. Sometimes the first premiere is not as good as it will be, after 10 years. So every work has to go into some kind of a refinement for it to really go and mature. And we need to do that with mentorship. We need to allow young choreographers, young makers, an opportunity for them to fail. And I remember very well, the likes of Luyanda Sidia, he was giving the full company to say, make work on the company, make the work that you would like to do on the company. And I will come in really just to observe and ask the questions that I would ask. Why that? Why not that direction? So that's the kind of mentorship that we were willing to invest into, to allow that person to grow also the body of work. So that it's not just a once-off. It was 5 years that he was with us, and you look at the incredible work that he's creating at the moment, and it's because he was given that platform for him to find purpose, to find a real a reason why he's making work. I would say as a closing remark is that, we all need to be curious. We need to be curious about our sector. We need to know, as you said, rightly said, that, you learn from the people like Mike and Braish. I learn too, and I continue to learn, and I allow myself to be curious in terms of learning. And I think, that's the only way we can really get ourselves in a position where we can work together, but also to understand why things are done that way, and to understand why is that person more successful than the other. And that's really, and on that note, talking about the curiosity, I will like to invite anyone in the creative sector, if they're not yet the subscribers of Stand Foundation, go on there and subscribe, because we are creating projects that are for the people, they are for the creative sector. There are lots of projects that are online that are there for people to look, and they can send an email to Mike at standfoundation.org.za if you want to be involved, if you want to contribute to Stand Foundation, if you want to partner in any way. There are projects, they are for the artist, by the artist. Thank you.